Texas again. So that change happened just before I got here. So I applied for the job of being dean at Texas A&M Commerce, and by the time I interviewed, I was interviewing at East Texas. But a little bit of history. So I grew up in Arizona on a cattle ranch close to Sedona. And we raised some registered beef masters and then just a bunch of commercial cows. And we didn't own the ranch, you know, it was just my best friend growing up, his dad owned the ranch. I was a cowboy, worked my way into management later on. To kind of a unique educational journey with that. Started off, I'll tell you that I am dyslexic, like seriously dyslexic. I kind of joke that I can't even spell cat. I mean, spelling is not my thing. But was definitely not what you would call college material. In fact, there was a little side story. Our high school counselor told me and one of my friends when we were seniors in high school that the two of us were never going to amount to anything. She has to call me doctor now. And he is the sheriff of Yavapai County, Arizona, which includes Sedona, Prescott, the Verde Valley. So I think we proved her wrong, but that's just evidence of what our students can do and not to doubt them. So from there, I went to my first time, so third time's a charm living in Texas.
Okay.
First time to Texas, I went to Clarendon Community College and did the ranch and feedlot operations program. And from there, I cowboyed in the Sandhills, cowboyed in Montana, managed the Fairview Angus Ranch in Montana, worked for Basin Angus, and took a change. I decided that if I wanted my own cows, I'd better do something besides run somebody else's. And so I got into real estate just in time to almost go bankrupt in 2008. I started real estate in 2006. It was great. I was thinking I have arrived. 2008 hit and we could not sell anything. And so I thought, well,
even if you could sell it, you couldn't finance it.
That's right. You know, there's some things we call loan fraud right now that we used to do regularly back then, but yeah. So, okay. So I decided that, you know, I needed something to do, so I started working as a substitute teacher in Billings, Montana. And I substituted in, you know, mostly like biology and the life sciences with my ag background. But like I also substituted in a Latin class, and I knew zero Latin, but we made it work. And I fell in love with teaching and learning at that point. And then I found out that I could, with the ag business degree that I had from Panhandle State in Oklahoma, I could come back to Texas and alternative certify as an ag teacher. And I was an FFA'er and 4-H'er all the way through growing up. And I thought, that's cool. I can get out of the snow. I can help mentor young minds and help them progress. I realized really quickly I needed more education in education. And so I started a master's degree online with Iowa State. That was great. Worked into having an offer for a full assistantship and later a postdoc at Iowa State in ag education. That was a great experience. And then after graduation, the first place that would hire me was Arkansas Tech University, so in the River Valley in Arkansas. Great small school. But then when we had the opportunity and the dean position was open here at East Texas, I thought that's where we want to live forever. My wife is actually an alum from A&M Commerce. When I taught high school ag at Sulphur Bluff just down the road, she went back to school as a non-traditional student and finished her degree in ag business. In fact, 3 of our faculty were her faculty when she was in class, and her academic advisor is now our department head. So it's kind of full circle. When we left Texas for me to go to grad school to do my PhD, I actually had in my mind, do any of y'all know Bob Williams? He's been a professor there for 1,000 years, something like that. but I thought to myself, and you have these thoughts when you're making a life change. I thought, Bob's getting older and he's gonna retire. If I finish a PhD in ag ed, he'll retire and I can come back, and commerce is where I wanna live. And of course, he's still there, he still works for me. He's coming up on 50 years in education now. But, it was always the goal to be here. So it feels like we're home now. We just love this area of Northeast Texas and are very excited to be here. But I want to tell you a little bit about the college and what we're doing, and feel free to interrupt and ask questions. I'd rather have a conversation than a speech any day. So some of the things, there we go. I was going the wrong direction. So I want to highlight some of our current research we're doing. So I think President Rudin spoke to you guys recently, and I'm sure he talked about the R2 status that we've now achieved. So that's heavy research, and we're producing doctoral students in some of the colleges. Part of that research push has been through agriculture. I like this picture. This is Dr. Desiree DeJuno, and he is a researcher in urban agriculture and in controlled systems agriculture. So he does a lot of work in hydroponics. He's brought in well over $1 million in grants in just the last couple of years, built a greenhouse. And you can see the kind of pinkish red lighting. His research right now, he's looking at hydroponics and different wavelengths of lighting to see how that affects plant growth, and doing it with tomatoes, kale, a variety of things. And then for his control group, we have basically an outdoor garden spot next to his big greenhouse that he's able to do this. But through his grants, he's been able to employ several graduate assistants and even a postdoc. So he's doing a phenomenal job. We're also doing research in the animal science sector with the beef cattle. The agronomy research is really starting to hit. You guys might not know, because I didn't know until I actually was beginning my process to interview. We have a 160-acre wheat farm just north of Greenville. And we are partnering with AgriLife Research on that. We have one joint faculty member, Dr. Grace Ogden, that does lots of wheat breeding research. And she's a joint appointment. She's 60% East Texas, 40% AgriLife, and that allows us to have her quality of talent and have somebody else pay for part of that. So it's been really helpful. We are, in September, we're gonna have another joint appointment joining us. And she's currently a postdoc and is working on our Greenville farm, but she will be 75% AgriLife and 25% East Texas. So she'll teach one class a semester for me and do, some of the service that faculty members do. But her main appointment is gonna be research with AgriLife and with us. And we share in the resource allocations from the grants that she gets. So it's a really good benefit all the way around.
Dr. Rank, what specifically is he trying to do with the hydroponics that's not being done or something?
He is looking and testing different cultivars of, like, tomatoes, for example, and seeing if the different light, he also has blue lights that he can put on. So he is looking at, since all of this is artificial light, if he can do different wavelengths of artificial light, if he can increase production.
Interesting.
So
in a small backyard, and like you're talking urban, somebody could have their own little greenhouse and a light that produces.
Or even at a commercial scale, there's lots of abandoned Kmarts,
Sure.
right? And what you could retrofit those to be producing food. Now the question I have as a rural person, this could be a little contentious, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, is if they do that in Dallas, where are they gonna steal the water from to do that? Because that's one thing us as rural people have to be aware of is, as we have technological advances, those resources are still coming from the rural populations. So, you know, those are things we have to look at, but
Do hydroponics take an I know hydro is water, does it take an excessive amount of water or not necessarily?
It depends on the system.
Oh, okay.
So, but you
I'm
can.
drilling down too far.
Yeah, you can recycle that water through
Yeah.
the system. Some smaller scale things, in fact, we even did this when I was a high school ag teacher in Marshall, Texas. We had a hydroponic system that would recycle the water through a tilapia tank.
Yeah.
And so we were growing fish and plants, and
Yeah.
then the waste from the tilapia would go in and be nutrients for the plants, so it was kind of a closed system like that. So there's lots of opportunities in that area. So that's the Greenville Farm. That's an interesting planter because they're counting like every seed that they put in the ground for research, and
Wow.
they'll do strips of different varieties. One interesting one that they've done recently, there was one of their varieties, the deer seemed to like it, because you know wheat's a grass when it starts. And the deer were coming in and really grazing one strip while leaving the other strips alone.
Huh.
So we're working on developing a research project now. I just hired a new wildlife person whose research area is primarily in deer. And so kind of a combination between our agronomy folks and our wildlife folks, we're gonna plant some more of that, and then we're gonna bring in an animal nutritionist, and we're gonna see, because usually nutritious things in nature taste better to the animals that eat them. So the palatability, and so we're gonna look at the nutrition in that wheat while it's in the grass stage, and the deer's use of that wheat. So it's a way to bring everybody together in research instead of siloing like we get into so often.
Are you gonna do that with people too, with the tomatoes and other stuff, to see if the tomato with the new light has the same value of a regular tomato?
You know, I think we could. That would be interesting. I don't think anybody's thought of that, but I'll bring that back to Dr. DeGino,
I think
because I think
you're
that would
doing
be
it with
interesting.
deer for crying
Yeah.
out loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Well,
just thinking that, well, never mind.
well, and
Lost my
thinking
train of
about like
thought.
our tomatoes you grow in the garden at home are different than the Walmart tomatoes, and so there may be something there.
Do you get a patent on your seed eventually if you find?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and commercialization, that's one of those things that we're working on in several areas on the research that we do. You know, the national perspective is kind of changing on the traditional grant funding and IDC and all of that stuff. You know, there's more and more universities that are chasing those grants, and the grants are becoming smaller and smaller in number. So we're really putting an emphasis on working with businesses now and doing research and development, and then
Yeah.
sharing in patents and residuals.
That's cool.
I went up to Tex Tech a few years ago, and they have Bear Industry on the, right
Yeah.
across the street. You maybe have been there, in their laboratories,
Yeah.
they're doing all this development, and, but they wouldn't let us in certain rooms there. It was high priority
Yeah.
and non-disclosure stuff.
There's pharmaceutical too, isn't it?
They are pharmaceutical, but they're big into
Mm-hmm.
agriculture.
Yeah,
So you're looking at those opportunities
those
also.
opportunities, yeah, we've got.
Let's bring Pfizer or somebody in to help you focus.
We have two livestock pharmaceutical companies that we're working with right now. One of them, we're under an NDA, so I can only say so much, but it's a equine medication. And we're gonna do the trials on horses and, you know, using a veterinarian, and they're paying for us to do the trials.
Right.
And we're collecting the data, and then at the end of the at the end of the research study, when it goes to market, we'll have residuals on that, and this equine, medicine, it looks like it's about $1 billion annual
Whoa.
market.
Okay.
And so like, even if we
Would it
get
be-
like, even if we get like $1 for each sale, we're gonna really have a lot of money coming in,
That's
so.
awesome.
Wow.
There's also the same company we're working with to develop a research lab for cattle and horse reproduction. And so some of the things that we can do there are going to be doing embryo transfer. So we've already been doing some embryo transfer, but we'll have a barn where we can do that with the labs. And we're gonna add an in vitro fertilization lab. And one of the things that we'll be able to do once that's up and running is test different media for freezing these embryos that we source from these cows, and see if we can get better conception rates when we thaw them out and put them back in cows.
Are they gonna build you a laboratory?
They'll build us a laboratory for that.
Who, are you allowed to say that, name of that company or not? No.
I'll pause on
I
that.
probably
one
wouldn't
for-
even know it if you said it, so,
Yeah.
okay.
And then there's another, they are in Texas though, so I can say that. There's another company we're working with, that they have an ear tag that collects data, and we can, almost like a pedometer, except for it's an ear tag, so we can tell, how the cattle are moving. We can tell, which ones are in heat when we're trying to artificially inseminate and things like that. And we're gonna do some testing with them on our cattle. Another thing we're looking at, there's a company called Halter, and they have, it's a virtual fencing system. So it's a collar that goes on cows, and it's not like a shock collar like dogs, but it makes noises by their ears, and you can manage your grazing without having to put extra fencing in. You just, on your phone, you draw a little circle of where you want the cows to go, and it just beeps at them until it pushes them to that spot. And I saw a video, Christmas time, now,
Interesting.
we're still trying to think about how we're gonna fund that, because it's a little expensive, but Christmas time, I saw a video that, because these things light up too, and you can have them light up red and green, and so they have them flashing red and green in time with jingle bells. And I think, having our cows doing jingle bells would be just really
That's
good.
hilarious.
That'd be cool.
So the Spur, that's our new multi-purpose ag center. We had our grand opening this spring, hosted our first college rodeo. We have 2 of our students qualified. So a little bit about rodeo at East Texas. We've had the rodeo team pretty solidly for about 12 years. I think back in like the 70s and 80s, there was a rodeo team, and then it kind of fell away, and now it's come back. We're nationally competitive. We're part of the National Intercollegiate Rodeo Association. And these students will hit 5 rodeos in the fall, 5 rodeos in the spring, go as far away as Kingsville and McNeese. We host ours. Our home rodeo is every spring. And there's, national ranking, or, regional rankings, and then the top 2 from each region go to Casper in the summer, Casper, Wyoming, for the national finals. 2 of our ladies on the women's team qualified to go to the national finals in breakaway roping. So we're really excited to have them representing East Texas up at Casper.
Awesome. Yeah, now their books and fees are a little more than other, like their rigs and horses.
Oh,
They cost a little more than books and fees for other students.
So I asked that question when we did the tour. They
Yeah.
provide their own animals.
They-
I know, I'm setting them
Oh.
up. Tell
Sorry.
us how much they might bring to the table when they
Oh.
show up as a student.
We have one girl, so Oceane, she's actually from Quebec, Canada. She's a barrel
yeah.
racer.
He told us that.
She was, year before last, she also rodeos as a professional. And at Las Vegas at the NFR, she was the Rookie of the Year barrel racer.
Wow.
So that's the caliber of students we're
That's
getting.
impressive.
Between her horses, her trailer with living quarters and the truck she hauls it with, there's probably almost $500,000 that leaves every time she goes out. In fact, we did a photo shoot when I first got here, and one of our other students, we were just kind of talking, and I asked our marketing and communications, I'm like, do you want me to look like a cowboy or do you want me to look like a dean with a suit? And they're like, oh, yeah, do the cowboy thing. And our rodeo coach was there. And he said, well, we can even get you a horse. I'm like, that works. I grew up horseback. So it was probably the most expensive horse I've ever swung a leg over. It was beautiful Palomino barrel horse.
Wow.
And I think that horse is probably worth about $100,000. And the horses I grew up on were like, for lack of a better word, sale barn trash that we got and we broke.
Yeah.
So
That's funny.
so it was interesting. But this facility, some of y'all have been here. There's about 4 acres under a roof with 2 full rodeo arenas.
It's awesome.
The first night when we did our grand opening, I think we had about 4,000 people in there, and they opened up the arena. We had Braxton Keith, a young country artist, did his concert. We could bring in a stage and sound and everything, and it was amazing to me. It was the first time I had seen, it looked like the 1990s in there. There was kids out on the dirt in front of the stage dancing, having a good time. And you see kids now, they're in their phone, and that's their entire world. But to see them actually having a good time like we used to back in the day, it was awesome. And there was a lot of high school kids that came to that concert. And from a recruiting perspective, I'm thinking, this is what they see as East Texas A&M now, instead of just school.
Yes, good
So,
thinking.
We're really excited to have that. We have the multi-purpose room as well, where we can hold conferences, and it's adjustable as far as room size. We can have 3 separate rooms as well. But we're hosting actually a national conference for the non-land grant colleges of agriculture and natural resources. We're hosting their national conference this fall, and part of it will be done right here at the Spur. So it's really amazing. We're also hosting about 500 FFA kids there for a leadership camp next month.
That's awesome.
We used it for the career development events for Area 5 and Area 6 FFA, and between this location and various locations across campus, we had 4,000 FFA members on campus for like livestock judging and all of those contests that they do. So
you're putting the facility to use immediately. I mean,
Yes.
it is.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I never want it to be empty. So we have kind of a tiered system for rental. Like there's, it's my facility, so I don't have to pay anything, which is great. So if I'm working with like AgriLife Extension. I don't know, do y'all know Ian Zarang, the new county agent here? So Ian and I,
One of the committees.
Ian and I were talking one day, and he wants to host a cattle external parasites, kind of screwworm focused AgriLife, and we co-branded that and are co-hosting that, so there's no expense to Extension for doing that. Now for other things, there'd be a little expense, and then if somebody's coming in and trying to make money off of it, we're going to get a share of it. It's just doing business, but it's fun to have good collaborations with Extension as well. And I'm excited that Ian's here, because when he graduated from Commerce years ago and started as a high school ag teacher, he was my teaching partner at Marshall.
Oh, very cool.
And he actually lived with my wife and I for a little while before he found an apartment when we hired him.
Boy, the world's getting small.
It really is. Well, and I taught his little brother at Sulphur Bluff, and I've known his family forever, so it's really neat how all these
Dr.
connections
Rank, do
work
they
out.
have cutting horse competition and rodeos at college or no?
Not really as far as sanctioned. Now, we do have a ranch horse team, which is somewhat cutting, but it's really working cattle in an arena, and they're doing really well too. We have a couple of veterans that are on that team that have competed in veterans-only horse shows through like the American Snaffle Bit Association.
Oh, very cool.
And they're winning prizes. So I mean, we've got Nathan Wells oversees that, and he judges AQHA shows and 4-H shows, and he's an instructor with us and coaches that team, and they're really doing well.
Well, you're blessed, this all coming to life and
Yeah.
with all the things that are happening.
Well, one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Ruby. So I asked him to give a brief welcome at the rodeo. We've got, the crowds there, and before we turn out the first broncs, I asked him if he'd come just give a welcome to the crowd. And so he comes out, and my favorite quote I've ever heard from him, I think I'm gonna make t-shirts that say this. He said, "Make no mistake, ag is back at East Texas A&M. And those of us in this room, we know it's never gone anywhere. We've always had ag, since the very beginning. But it's definitely back in the spotlight, and it's on the radar of the top levels of the administration, and also down at system. The chancellor came up for our grand opening, and very, very, we're blessed to have as much support as we have right now.
Why did that girl from Quebec decide to come to Commerce?
Mostly because of our coach. So Damian White is our coach. He was a pro rodeo guy. He's fairly local. He's got family history up around Paris, and then he grew up down in Carthage. But he's here. He's been here, established as a coach. We've got a good team. Now we've got really good facilities. We also offer scholarships, so we've got a scholarship budget. And at East Texas, if a student receives $1,000 in scholarship or more from a competitive scholarship that's open to Texas residents as well, they can get in-state tuition.
Oh.
So
That's
we
impressive.
give out a lot of $1,000 scholarships for kids that make the rodeo team. So the ones from California or Oklahoma or wherever, or Quebec, they can get in-state tuition. So that helps
Which
us
is
a lot.
significantly less.
And then there with her, she was starting to rodeo professionally, and we knew she'd be one that would make it to the national finals. We gave her basically a full ride, and so what we do with that, we're a different budget than athletics. They're through the college, and we've got our own budget. But just like recruiting a quarterback, when you've got those rock stars out there, we try to do what we can to get them. Mostly what we do is we look at all the other scholarships that they've earned, and whether it's community scholarships or presidential scholarships for good grades. Most of our rodeo kids are actually in honors college as well.
Nice.
And if they get an honors scholarship, and then we try to make up the difference to get to full ride for as many as we can.
That is amazing. Do they qualify for NIL, the rodeo team? Name, image, likeness, like the athletes? They can sell their.
It's a little different. So since we're not NCAA.
Oh, that's
but
that's
we
better.
have in NIRA we have what they call the patch program.
Uh-huh.
So they can be sponsored by a variety of companies, Preferred or whoever, and they'll wear a patch on their shirt or like on the collar of their shirt, and that helps offset their travel costs too, because a lot of that's individually
Oh
funded.
my God.
But also if they win money, they get to keep it too. So
Excellent.
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 You guys, we were talking a little bit about just the improvements along the road. So we've come in and put this new preferred fence down the road on the farm on 24, and it's really dressed things up. And one of the thoughts behind that, we've got good things going on, but when it looks run down, perception is reality. And we wanted to come in and be less maintenance, because that old white fence that's been there for who knows how long, I don't know when that was first put in, but it was starting to be a lot of maintenance just to keep the boards up, replace posts and all of that. So we wanted to go as low maintenance as we could. This fence product, you know, it looks nice, and I'm gonna be long retired before we have to replace anything on it. So I'm pretty excited about that. We've now done both sides of the road, and we're just really excited with the look. We also painted the exteriors and the doors of all the university buildings that are highway facing. And so now we're working on our improvements going back off the road.
That's a good
Yeah.
concept.
You know,
Well,
but-
just over the lake, the graphic there is
Yeah.
impressive.
I can't wait to go by there at Christmas time and see the cows
And with
dancing.
their- yeah,
we
red
can get
and
that
green.
going, that'd be good.
In their ears, lights on their ears.
So we've also started registered Angus cattle. So that is Rita. She is the 0108 cow. She is the first Angus cow that I bought. And my background is in Angus. So when I was young, I worked for Basin Angus, which at that time was part of Stevenson Basin in, Hobson, Montana, close to Lewistown, Montana. At that time, they were the largest registered cattle herd in North America. It was a family that had all worked together, and then they've since split the family partnership, and like each family member kind of has their own ranch, but Basin is still in existence. And it's one of those things I always tell our students. So this is the one that gets me in trouble sometimes at college. Actually, everybody kind of agrees with me, they just don't want to admit it. The most important thing that a student can learn in college is how to network with people and how to build relationships.
Absolutely.
The academics, you can take English anywhere you want. Every college offers that. You can take agriculture. Would I prefer them come here instead of going to Tarleton or College Station? Sure, I'd love to have them come here, and I really think we can offer them some things that are pretty advantageous here. But they can learn the bookwork of agriculture anywhere. They don't even need college for a lot of it. You can learn how to grow tomatoes in a garden on YouTube. You don't need to pay tuition for that. But making connections and building relationships, that's what that time in college is really for. Whether it's with your peers, I'm an alumni from the Alpha Gamma Rho agriculture fraternity. That association with Alpha Gamma Rho has gotten me into rooms that I would have never gotten into on my own. And that's just one example, but Collegiate FFA, our ambassadors program, those are those times when students can actually practice leadership, can actually get to know people. One example, I just had a student, he just returned, and it's really cool. Basin Angus Ranch, where I used to work, the owners called me, and they had an internship that they were trying to fill that was actually sponsored, and it was a paid internship, paid for by the American Angus Association. And they were having trouble finding somebody to be an intern for them. And they called me and they're like, hey, do you have any students? So I had one in mind, so I talked to the kid. Sent him from East Texas to Billings, Montana in January to calve heifers with him. And he worked for him all spring. He took the other classes to be full-time. He took those online. And he got experience and connections that are unbelievable working with one of the largest Angus producers in the country. We call her Baby Rita. So that's the calf that we got out of that first cow. In registered cattle, we just kind of carry that cow name, just kind of a family name down the line. I had to kind of a little joke with the provost. She thought it would be really cool to have a naming contest with the students for the new baby, because getting Rita made us, there was a lot of publicity about her. And I thought, that would be kind of cool, let the students name the new baby. And then I thought, if you have livestock, you're gonna have dead stock. And I don't want to take the risk of the students naming something and then all of a sudden get pneumonia or something like that. But baby Rita was just weaned, she's doing great. I bought the cow from Gabriel Angus, so down at Grand Saline. Ron and Lana Gabriel, they're doing a fantastic job. And, you know, I'd known their ranch manager, Andy Maupin, for a while. We just kind of were always in similar areas for the last probably 20 years managing ranches. But she came through their sale. I went down to the sale. I was not planning on buying a cow at that sale, but she came through and she was kind of buried in the sale order. It was a bunch of 3-in-1, so that's a bred cow with a calf at her side. But they pulled the calf off because the calf had navel problems when he was young, didn't look good. So they pulled the calf off and were just selling her as a bred cow. And she sold for $5,500. And so, you know, when she was around, you know, that 4,000 to 5,000, I'm like, yeah, I'll bid, you know, because that's almost commercial cow price right now because cattle are so high. So I got her bought. The reason they sold her, they kept a daughter of hers in their donor cow lineup and were, you know, collecting embryos on her and things like that. They just sold a bull that's a granddaughter of our, or a grandson of our cow for $160,000 for half interest going into bull stud and semen production.
Wow.
Now, I don't think our calves are gonna bring us that kind of money because, you know, we're a university, we're just, you know, we don't have the name and the connections as Gabriel's, but even in their advertising, when they were advertising this bull before their spring sale, they were telling people that his granddam is the foundation Angus cow at East Texas A&M.
Okay.
So we're getting that free advertising from them, which really helps. In fact, even the chancellor, so at Board of Regents meetings, he has a little time when he like highlights exciting things that are happening at different member institutions. And when it came time for East Texas, he threw that picture up on his slideshow and was talking about what we're doing with cattle out
Love
here.
it.
So we're up to 5 registered Angus cows. We've got 3 heifers and 2 bulls out of that. One of our advantages there is, you know, a bull out of her, you know, a grandson sold for that kind of money. We can't afford to buy bulls like that to use on our cows. You know, my budget just will not allow it. But we can keep some of those bull calves and we can run those back into our herd and we can raise them a lot cheaper than we can go buy them and get that same level of genetics. So that's part of what we're thinking. Also just, we're not gonna sell baby Rita. We named her actual official Angus name is the E.T. Rita 1889.
Oh.
So, but we're gonna hang on to her, and you know we've got these other cows. We're doing embryo transfer with these, and so we're flushing these cows. We've made 11 embryos from Rita that we're gonna put in our commercial cows as recipients next week. So she'll have genetically, well, they won't all make, but we're anticipating probably 7 or 8 calves in the next year that are her genetics. So we're really excited about where we're going with the Angus.
And that keeps her healthier.
That keeps her healthier. We're not pushing her as hard as we could. We got the calf out of her, we flushed her twice, and then now we've AI'd her and we're gonna let her have a natural calf. Part of it is I just don't have enough recipients to put all the embryos in because we're only running about 100 head right now. We've got room for 300 head. So if we do some brush control and fertilization, so we're working towards doing that. This is super exciting as well. So we just purchased right at Christmas time, we purchased 30 head of open heifers that we've now got a bull turned out with them from King Ranch down in South Texas. And they're American Crews. So that is Santa Gertrudis, and they're half Santa Gertrudis, half Red Angus. And King Ranch has been really working on developing these. Where this started, shortly after I got here, I met with the executive director of the Santa Gertrudis breed, and we were talking about the direction I wanted to go with the cattle and things. And he said, you really need to get in touch with King Ranch. And so we were talking about King Ranch, and he made the introduction to Daryl White, the manager down there. And I was down at Kingsville for a conference, and Daryl and I got together. And for a kid that grew up on a ranch, taking half a day to tour the King Ranch with the manager, that's like a bucket list thing.
Absolutely.
But Daryl and I got to talking, and we knew we wanted to do something together. We see things really similar as far as, improving cattle and, having on the ranch cattle that are functional, that'll breed back every year, longevity, keep them in the herd, good feet and legs, all of that. But we also have to think about the meat aspect and have cattle that are efficient on feed and can go make it into choice or prime grade before they're harvested. And that's what they're really working on with these. And we talked through a few different avenues, but with these cattle, they come from the King Ranch Elite herd. And so that was a closed herd of Santa Gertrudis for 50 years probably. And then they've started breeding them to these Red Angus and coming up with the American Cruise cattle. The ones that they fed out, so they just bought part interest in, or majority interest, I think, in cobalt feeders in western Kansas. So they're feeding out cattle and harvesting them. They're getting these 80% or better into the choice or prime grade for meat, which for a Santa Gertrudis, that's doing something, because anytime you have Brahman in there, you're reducing your meat quality a little bit, but the Angus is really helping. They have, some of their cows are staying in the herd and having a calf every year, even into being 14 and 15 years old, which, the traditional thing is you think, cull about 10 or 11 because your production starts going down. But if we can expand and get 2 more calves out of a cow before we have to replace her, that's a huge economic impact. So we're starting with those 30. They made a really good deal with us on that. We actually paid commercial price for them, or maybe a little bit lower. And they just sold some of these, actually the same herd, they sold them as bred heifers. And they brought almost twice as much as what we paid for these. And that association with King Ranch, they're interested in helping us in moving things forward. So Daryl and then Mr. Grigg, he is the operations vice president for all of their, even the turf grass and the cotton and everything. They came up for our grand opening of the Spur, which was really cool to have them there. We looked at cattle all day and then went over to the Spur. But they're interested in helping us really establish a herd of these to move forward. And from a research perspective, not only do we have the cattle now that we can do research locally, but they're willing to share genomic data on, they're so big, 22,000 head, that we can look at, specific things in the genome and be able to see, which traits in which cattle, and it's going to be neat. Let's see, what else do we have? Twin Oaks, so the old blueberry farm. So I remember picking blueberries out there with my wife when she was a student 15 years ago. It had kind of fallen into disrepair. President Rudin has invested in this with us, and we're really rejuvenating it. So we've changed the name to the Twin Oaks Farm for Experiential Learning. And it's our really community connection piece. We've hosted grade school kids come out there and plant seeds in the garden. They do community work days. They've got an area where people can bring their compost that then we'll compost and use. Dr. Grace Ogden is in charge out there, and she's just doing phenomenal things. We employ 4 student workers out there and 1 graduate assistant that oversee the production, oversee some research that we're doing out there. But when I first got here, I had a lot of people from the community would talk about how they remembered the blueberry farm. And, you know, memories are wonderful, and I think they were remembering it as like even way cooler than it ever was. But we're really getting that back to a place and expanding what we're doing. One thing we did, we cleared about 3 more acres that was just overgrown brush. And so we have more space now to use. So pretty excited about the things that are going on at Twin Oaks. Thinking about the vision. So as you can see, it's been a busy year and a half. But we are, and part of this comes from conversations with the guys down at King Ranch and with Gabriel's, you know, Stevenson's up in Montana with that intern. But I see there's a real need in this part of Texas for a ranch management center. You know, down at A&M Kingsville, they've got the King Ranch Ranch Management Institute, and it's mostly for grad students and doing research kind of in that area. I envision us establishing something similar to that here, and really as an interdisciplinary research center where I can bring in faculty from each of the different disciplines. So obviously an animal scientist, beef cattle, and nutrition specialist. But I don't know if you guys have ever seen this when it comes to college, but a lot of times professors do really cool research, and if you try it on a ranch, you're gonna go broke. So we want to balance that and bring in an ag business person, because we want to be looking at the bottom line and the markets and things like that as well. And then bring in a plant and soil scientist. You know, we have all of these people on staff already, but in that center, plant and soil scientists to look at forages, soil health, thinking about as we begin the regenerative grazing and things like that, and build soil health. And then there's wildlife. You know, when you look at ranching in Texas, high fence is going to be a part of it, or even just whitetail hunting. So bring in that wildlife expertise. And then in my discipline in ag ed, everything that we do, we've got to be able to communicate it. So someone that can, you know, design educational programs, evaluate learning, you know, evaluate grants, do all that communication stuff. That's an ag leadership education and communications piece. So all of those together in a ranch management center to do research and teaching related to the beef as well as the sheep and goat industry in East Texas. We have just approved, so this came across my desk like 2 days ago. But you remember Clarendon College, where I started my education, Ranch and Feedlot Operations program. One of my classmates is actually their dean of students now. So, you know, there was a really easy connection. We were talking because it's a community college, and a lot of the students that go through the ranch management program actually lose credit when they transfer to finish a 4-year degree, because, well, it happened to me when I went to Oklahoma Panhandle State. I had taken beef cattle management from Jack Mormon, who Mr. Mormon had been the general manager for the JA, so Charles Goodnight's old ranch out in the Panhandle. Mr. Mormon had managed the JA. In fact, Boots O'Neill at the 4 Sixes worked for Mr. Mormon when he was young. I took beef cattle management from that guy, but it was a 1,000 level course. And I had to take it from a pure academic assistant professor as a 3,000 level course, retake it. And after Mr. Mormon, I could have taught that class. So we were looking, how can we make this transition easier on those students to take advantage of the learning that they've had. So we've just signed off on a 2+2 agreement. So they'll do 1 year of ranch and feedlot operations as a certificate. They do a second year at Clarendon to earn an Associates of Applied Science in Agriculture. During that time, their spring semester, they'll take 2 classes from us online, building their transition, and then they can transfer seamlessly into a Bachelor's of Ag Business as they come here.
That's excellent.
And it mimics the route I actually took, because I went Ag Business, because I had one of my mentors, a big rancher back home, said, you don't need to do animal science if you want to be a ranch manager. You need to do animal science if you want to be a nutritionist or a repro specialist, but if you're going to be managing ranches, you've got to have finance, you've got to have accounting, you've got to have all of that stuff. And I say all the time that in my current job, I probably use my certificate in RFO from Clarendon College more than I do my PhD. But stepping it into Ag Business will prepare those guys that we want out there as ranch managers.
So many degrees, if you transfer, you lose credits.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so you probably saves them a year.
Yeah, it
Having
probably
them
will save them a year just having that path, and we're looking at other areas where we can do that as well. There's another thing, and this is really unique to just our geographic location. So if you haven't noticed, I'm a rural guy, and my mind always goes to rural East Texas. It's home, it's where I've always wanted to be. But being so close to the Metroplex, urban agriculture does play a role, and it's important, and we get a lot of students from Dallas. So we have just developed, it goes online this fall, an urban food systems graduate certificate. And we have that actually stepped into the Ag Leadership Education and Communications. And when we were thinking about how to develop that, when I look at places like Bonton Farms in South Dallas or Seed Project Foundation in McKinney Roots, most of the growing is actually volunteers. And then, but where the potential is and where the need for education is in the management of those things. And if you look at those managers, they're managing volunteers, they're doing a lot of extension type stuff, program planning, grant writing, those sorts of things. So what we're doing with this certificate, it can be stacked into the Masters of Ag Leadership Education and Communications, and it's focused on policy, because you can't have goats just anywhere. Garden planning, small animal and chicken management. There's 4 classes together that give a foundation of the structural knowledge for how to run an urban farm or Bonton or something like that. And then finishing that master's degree gives them the leadership and the program planning to be able to go out and be successful in developing these things. So we're working really hard with that as well. So
Getting on 8:30.
Are we getting that?
I could sit and listen for another hour, I think, but I think some of us unfortunately have to
Okay,
go to work.
that is totally
But-
good.
Go
I was
ahead.
having fun. Just
We are too.
real quick, these are, so Urban Food Systems certificates coming out this fall, Masters in Ag Business is coming out this fall, and then we're working on probably spring for plant and soil science and another year for animal science. And thank you.
Are you,
Awesome.
wow, are you attracted